My table mate is known for being cold, arrogant, and aggressive. I'm always careful when I'm around him, afraid of displeasing him. Then one day, after school, I went back to school. Should have been against it, but it was full of special students. My cold table mate sat in the middle, looking proud. There's nothing to brag about, he's not even as handsome as my deep song. I stood at the door, not daring to interrupt his boastful story, because I was deep song. The next morning, I went to class early to have breakfast before my classmates arrived. Otherwise, when he comes, I don't even dare to speak loudly, let alone eat breakfast. My tablemate's name is Ntingu. She studies well, has a good family background, and also has a beautiful face that's almost divine. But he is famous for being cold. I've been sitting at the same table as him for 2 years and he's never looked directly at me. He is really fierce. Every time someone asked me to deliver a love letter to him, he would stop writing, look at me with cold eyes, and tap his fingers on the table as if telling me, "Do you dare accept it?" Furthermore, he seems to have obsessive-compulsive disorder. The desk is cleaner than my desk. He makes me feel like a fairy in heaven, not in the same world as us mortals. In short, I didn't even dare to say much to him. While Ntinga hasn't arrived yet, I have to eat this egg quickly. Just as I finished peeling the egg and taking a bite, someone lightly whistled at my chair. A familiar and cold voice rang out from the top of my head. Instinctively, I raised my head. The egg was half stuck in her mouth, while Ntinga stood nearby, her hands in her pockets, her expression expressionless. He sat inside, I sat outside. He was waiting for me to let him in. I stood up in panic, wanting to let him in. I didn't dare to let him wait too long, but the egg in his mouth still couldn't be swallowed, so I choked. I felt uncomfortable and hugged my chest. Ntinga didn't show anything, just quietly opened the thermos and gave it to me. I didn't think much, instinctively took it and drank water to swallow the egg. Choking to death on eggs, I was afraid of going to the newspaper and people would laugh at me. Ntinga's voice rang in her ears, "How can you choke when you eat eggs? It's over, I'm hated." I looked at him cautiously and explained, "I was afraid you'd wait too long so I ate a little too quickly." Ntinga frowned. I suddenly realized I was drinking water from Ntinga's thermos. "It's over, why would I drink water from his bottle?" I pursed my lips, not knowing how to apologize. Seeing Ntinga still standing waiting for me to give way, I quickly stepped aside. Ntinga said nothing, walked in and sat down. And I stood next to it, carefully wiping the thermos over and over again. "Hate me?" Ntinga spoke coldly, startling me. "No, no. I want to clean you up." I quickly waved my hand. I really don't hate Ntinga. He didn't say anything, just looked at me like that. Sure enough, my tablemate was still as cold as ever. I hugged the thermos, for a moment not knowing what to do, so I stubbornly gave the thermos to him. "Ntinga, do you still want a drink?" Not knowing if I was hallucinating or not, Ntinga's eyes stopped on the mouth of the thermos for a few seconds. His eyes darkened, and after a while he said, "No need, give it back." Having finished speaking, he stopped paying attention to me and started flipping through a very thick physics book. I glanced at the book cover. Ntinga is really good, he studied physics at university. As for me, I still don't understand high school physics. "Ntinga, I'm really sorry today." "Don't worry, I'll buy you a new thermos." Ntinga did not raise her head, just coldly said 2 words, "No need." I stood next to it and regretted it to death. When my life is over, I have definitely offended this minister. So the whole week that followed I lived in worry. I don't dare give away a newly purchased thermos. But Ntinga doesn't seem to care about this. His attitude towards me was still as usual, not saying much. I lived peacefully for a week. At the end of the week, a message appeared on Kovogan's phone, "Deep Song, help me. Are you free this weekend to help me draw an exhibition board for the school's propaganda department? I have a fever, please help me draw one." I held the phone and thought for a bit. I think I'm fine with painting. So I immediately replied, Okay, you can rest assured to recuperate, leave the exhibition board to me. Today the weather is beautiful, the sun is not too hot. The weekend school was very quiet, the wind blowing through the leaves created a rustling sound that sounded very comfortable. I was carrying my school bag and planning to go to class. Today is Saturday, there is no one in class. I can safely draw a sketch first. But when I walked to the classroom door, the classroom that should have been filled with exceptional students, they seemed to be discussing which star was handsome. I know they are all children of rich families, meeting stars at family parties is normal. My cold table mate sat in the middle, looking proud. There's nothing to brag about, he's not even as handsome as my family deep song. I stood at the door, not daring to interrupt his boastful story, because I was deep song. A female student asked him, and Tingu, deep song is your desk mate, right? And Tingu lazily put her feet on her lap. Yes, my table mate is very obedient. And Tingu right now is very different from the Tingu I usually see. If it wasn't for that face, I wouldn't even think it was the same person. A female student caught my eye. She suddenly giggled and asked Tingu casually, Sister in Deep, did you say that you are about 1m8 tall and carry a milky white school bag? And Tingu's expression was a bit more proud and satisfied. Yes, it looks very good. Having finished speaking, he seemed to think of something and kicked the female student. How do you know? I tell you, it's best that you don't have any intentions with my husband. The female student smiled and dodged, raising her hand to point to the door. That's the direction I'm standing in. How dare I have any intentions towards your husband? But sisterin, I just met the legendary Deep Song. And Tingu pretended to be indifferent. How can he still stand at the door? The female student's smile became even brighter. Who knows? And Tingu stiffened, he slowly lowered his legs and turned around. I didn't have time to hide, my four eyes looked at each other. The whole classroom was terrifyingly silent, 1 second, 2 seconds. Everyone kept looking at me silently, it was so embarrassing. Perhaps this atmosphere needs to be calmed down. So, I held my bag tightly and tried to greet Tingu. Hello, Tingu. Tingu's eyes flashed with regret. The voice was very small, mumbling something. Listen carefully to understand what he is saying. It's done, it's really done, everything is done. I stood at the door not daring to move. And Tingu's expression immediately returned to coldness. He went out quietly, but his earlobes were a little red. Passing by the female student, and Tingu raised her foot and kicked her to the ground. You only have a mouth, but you can still express it? I was killed by you. Female student rubs her butt in pain. Sisterin, I'm also helping you. You've been favoring him for 2 years now. And Tingu didn't say anything, didn't even dare look at me. I could say I ran away until I finished drawing the exhibition board and went home to lie down in bed. In the evening, I suddenly realized. So my desk mate isn't actually cold at all, he's pretending to be cold and has been pretending for 2 years. Why? I turned over again, not really understanding the reason. What is Tingu's self-repression? Can't you really like me? He and I are not from the same world. The people in today's class are all notoriously naughty students that even the teacher can't handle, but they seem to be very obedient to Tingu. I sat up and leaned against the balcony. Tonight, the mood is very different. I looked up at the sky, thinking, remembering the first time I met Tingu. It was on the first day of 10th grade. Stepping from middle school to high school is a fresh start. Everyone was very curious about everything, but my first day was a little rough. On the first day of school that day, I entered 3rd grade and stopped at a position next to the window. I chose the outside location. After cleaning it up, I also cleaned the table inside next to the window. That's the place I left for the speechless lady. He was also in 3rd grade, but I had just finished wiping when a shadow fell over my head. I looked up, there was a fat, sweaty guy. I was just about to say there's someone next to me, but he put his school bag on the table inside. I frowned and politely explained the situation to him, but the fat guy didn't listen and aggressively told me to stay away. He wanted to sit here. He is fat and his whole body is sweaty. I was speechless for half a day, my whole face was red. I'm afraid he'll slap me, and I'm afraid he'll become my desk mate. So, even though my legs were shaking, I still stood still, not giving him half a step. The chubby guy asked me why I didn't give way. I said in a low voice, "Classmate, can't sit comfortably." Seeing my chubby friend's face become more and more unsightly, I started to regret it again. It's over, it definitely hurt his self-esteem. What was I thinking at that time? I'm thinking, "Oh God, please save me, anyone, please come and save me." Then, Antingu appeared. While my chubby friend and I were arguing, he appeared with a cold expression, possessing a face so beautiful that it was divine. The long, slender fingers made a soft thud sound. The chubby boy's school bag was thrown to the ground. A cold voice rang out. "The position inside, I want to sit, get out of the way." In a blink of an eye, all the students in the class paid attention. I just vaguely knew that he was probably a bit famous. I thought the chubby guy would fight with him, but unexpectedly, Antingu didn't put the chubby guy in his eyes at all. Antingu only glanced at him, her eyes without any emotion. "What, do you have an opinion?" The chubby boy didn't dare say a word and left. Antingu's eyes stopped on me. I was stunned, but let him come in and sit down. I didn't dare breathe loudly because the oppressive aura on his body was really strong, giving people the feeling of being even scarier than the chubby guy. "Deep song, don't be afraid, this will be your table mate from now on, don't be afraid, he can't beat you to death." I hesitated for a long time before reaching out my hand towards Antingu. "Classmate, hello. My name is Deep Song." Antingu did not raise her head, just took out a very thick physics book to read. Just when I thought he wouldn't answer me, a cold voice rang out. "Antingu." I quietly wiped my sweat. Oh my God, he's so cold. I later learned that he turned out to be Antingu, ranked first in the entire city in the 10th grade entrance exam. Mintan's #1 high school is the best school in Mintan. Students in the school either come from wealthy or powerful families or have exceptionally excellent achievements. I belong to the second category. My family has no money, but my parents love me very much. My father worked as a worker in someone else's factory, and my mother took care of the family. I want them to have a good life in the future, so I try very hard to study, not daring to be negligent at all. When I passed the entrance exam to Mintan #1 high school, my parents were as happy as if they wanted to set off firecrackers. They just said, "Deep Song, our family is really talented." Just thinking about buying new clothes for me, afraid that I would be looked down upon by my friends at school, I smiled and told them, "I have a lot of clothes that are still very new, I'm fine wearing that. If your parents really want to buy it, then buy yourself a set." "How long has it been since your parents wore new clothes?" My parents suddenly burst into tears. How can our son understand this? Tuition at Mintan #1 high school is very expensive. Luckily, I passed the exam and received a full scholarship, but in reality, Mintan #1 high school is a place that gathers talent. Pupils' achievements are very good. And my middle school is completely not at the same level. The school divided classes according to achievement. I passed the exam in 3rd grade, while 2nd grade was full of good people. Generally the best of the good. Therefore, I still don't understand why Antingu is in 3rd grade. Every time he ranked first in the class, he was still very comfortable as if he were doing his homework haphazardly. He should have been in 1st grade. Antingu has not gone to class for 3 days. After that awkward meeting, he didn't go to class for 3 days. During the 3 days he was absent, I was very unfamiliar with him. Even though every time I'm with him, I'm careful, then careful again, afraid of offending this minister, but I'm still not used to it. Because as long as he's there, my thermos is always full of water. He always knows when my thermos is running low and refills it for me. Even though Antingu was very cold, not many people in the class dared to talk to him. But every time I encounter a difficult math problem, just frown, and Tingu will take out my homework and look at it. And Tingu's hands are very beautiful. Even when he lectured me, I would stare at his hands in a daze. And Tingu will raise her hand and gently pat the back of my neck. The voice was as cold as ever, concentrate. His hair is very long, but maybe because he pampers me. When I talk, he always has the habit of tucking his hair behind his ear. My eyes stopped on his face. It was clearly an indifferent face, but it also seemed gentle at times. Normally I'm afraid he's no longer there. Until now, I have only thought about the good things about Ntingu. Ntingu has not been to class for 3 days. Is he avoiding me? His figure running away that day was so funny. He definitely doesn't want others to see him, he definitely feels shy, and doesn't want to be my table mate anymore. I sighed. Knowing that, if I hadn't returned to sketching class that day, I wouldn't have been so embarrassed. The truth proves that I was thinking too much. On the 4th day, Ntingu returned. It turned out that the 3 days he was absent was just to participate in the national physics competition and easily won the championship prize. I breathed a sigh of relief. You're not avoiding me, that's good. It's just that when he came back, I changed seats. Kovogan suffered a broken bone. When he called me to tell me, he actually cried loudly, "Deep song, I don't want to live anymore." I quickly asked him, "What's wrong?" "Don't cry anymore, speak slowly." Kovogan interrupted, "While bathing, I fell and broke my leg. I'm really unlucky, I'm the only unlucky person in the whole world. Before, a bird pooped on my head, a brick fell on my head, I could endure all those things. But why was I so unlucky that just after I recovered from my fever, I broke my leg? I'm about to go to school, now it's great, but I broke my leg. I'm sure to fall behind in so many lessons. Much behind." I asked him worriedly, "Is your leg in a cast? Does it still hurt now?" "The cast is on, it doesn't hurt anymore. But now it's inconvenient for me to walk, it's okay. You go to school, I'll do your homework with you. If there's anything I can take care of you. Does the minister agree to let you change places? The two have been sitting at the same table for 2 years. It's okay, Tinga hasn't been to class for 3 days. I'll talk to the teacher tomorrow. Anyway, I don't have a deskmate right now." On the other end of the line came the sound of Kovogan blowing his nose. "Deep song, you are so nice." So the next day, Ntingu returned, faced with an empty seat. If not for me, then sit on the other side of the classroom. My eyes and his met. He didn't say anything, just looked at me with dark eyes. If I wasn't hallucinating, I seemed to see self-pity in Ntingu's eyes. Kovogan sat next to me, trembling uncontrollably. "Deep song, the minister's eyes make me feel like he wants to kill me." I patted his back to comfort him. "No, you must have seen it wrong." A week later, Kovogan and I were both safe and sound. It's just that Ntingu's eyes became even more resentful. Kovogan and I went to get hot water when we met Ntingu. He was with the girls I saw in class the other day. Now, he seems to have begun to blend in with them. Everyone is still surprised why Ntingu went with these special students. Furthermore, these particular students seem to be very afraid of Ntingu. The great God is indeed a great God. Ntingu went first, we went in opposite directions. Our eyes met and I quickly left. Why is my heart beating so fast? Furthermore, Ntingu seems to be a bit more handsome. His eyes darkened, just as we passed each other, he grabbed my hand. "Deep song, are you afraid of me?" Very small voice. I was stunned for a moment. "Not afraid." Ntingu looked at me from head to toe. "Not afraid, what do you understand?" I smiled wryly. "I'm honest, I'm not afraid of you." Ntingu raised her eyebrows. "Then why did you change places?" I smiled innocently at him. "It's not because Kovogan broke his right leg, I have to take care of him." Ntingu looked at me and said, "When will you move back?" Turns out he wanted me back. I feel a little happy in my heart. Even I didn't realize it myself. I seriously explained to him, Chinko Vogan has not recovered yet. And Tinga let go of my hand, her eyes reproachful. You're so poor, you're the only friend. Ko Vogan sat next to him, hearing this sentence and wanted to refute, but did not dare. I said softly, no, but he and I are best friends. And Tinga's brown pupils reflected my entire image. He was upset, rubbed his hair, glanced at Ko Vogan, his tone was a bit fierce, your broken leg, when will it heal? Ko Vogan was scared and grabbed me tightly. Sir, don't worry. It seems like it's almost there. And Tinga sighed helplessly, slightly bending down to look at me. In his eyes, it seemed like there was only me. I asked worriedly, and Tinga, what's wrong? And Tinga saw my tension and smiled softly, my tablemate, once his leg is healed, please come back, do you hear me clearly? I looked into his eyes and nodded slightly. A month later, Ko Vogan had his cast removed. And Tinga personally came to change my seat. He walked downstairs with a cold expression. Everyone's strange eyes quietly moved my things back to their original places and arranged them very neatly. I pulled his sleeve, smiled and looked at him, and Tinga, thank you. And Tinga turned her head away unnaturally and continued to do homework that I didn't understand. He said reluctantly, it's good to go back. The relationship between me and Ntinga seems to have changed, but it also seems to have remained unchanged. He's still as cold as before. It seemed that Ntinga proudly boasted how handsome I am in class that day. It's just that I met him in a blur, because now he refuses to admit it. Moreover, now every time I raise my head I see his slightly panicked eyes. His earlobes are always red inexplicably. If other classmates saw his state, no one would believe him. He and I still don't talk much, because he's always writing something. One time I accidentally saw it, written on it observation diary. Done, are you writing a diary? And Tinga writes a diary? Why don't I believe it? I never thought that one day I would be able to meet Ntinga's parents, because Ntinga's parents are leaders of a large corporation and have a very high status. Even most of the teaching building of Mintan First High School was donated by them. I vaguely heard classmates who had met Ntinga's parents say that they were very strict people and had a strong oppressive temperament. I think that's right, after all, managing such a large corporation. I thought that someone like me would never meet them in my whole life, but I never expected them to appear at such a timely moment. These past few days, I haven't been able to concentrate on studying because my father was fired from the factory. He doesn't deserve to be fired. He is a long-time employee of this factory. But our family has offended someone who should not be offended. Our house is located in an old alley with a quaint style, very suitable for opening a store. A famous owner on that street noticed our house and wanted to buy it at a very low price. That day, a middle-aged woman and her husband drove up to our door. A man wearing a mink coat stepped down. Looking at us with disdain, "Are you the homeowner? Why are you so poor? Quickly move out. We want to buy this house. You guys are just a waste here." That was the husband of the landlady who wanted to buy our house. My parents knew they couldn't offend them, so they just dared to gently refuse. "Sir, I'm really sorry, we don't know where to go when we leave here. Look, can you wait until we find a place to live and then sell it to you? Please let us stay for another year." The middle-aged man frowned. "I can't wait for you guys, move out quickly." My mother frowned. "Why are you being so unreasonable? This house is ours. If we want to sell it, we can sell it. If we don't want to sell it, we won't sell it. There is no forced buying or selling." The man looked at my father contemptuously and mocked, "Just with this poor appearance, does he deserve to live in this house? This alley has very good development potential in the future. I heard it will be invested and exploited by a large company. Do you guys deserve to be here? I really can't hold it anymore. Uncle, please, speak clearly. This is our house." The middle-aged man's face darkened. "You dare call me uncle? You guys won't sell, right? Okay, don't regret it. At that time, You'll beg us to buy it." The man left angrily. A few days later, my father was fired from the factory where he had worked for 20 years, just because the other boss was a friend of the factory director. With just one word from him, my father had to leave the factory. But this is the only source of income for our family. My father seemed to age a lot overnight. But when he saw me, he still smiled and patted my head. "Don't worry, I will think of a way. Just rest assured and study." Click, the pen fell to the ground. I regained my composure and faced Ntingu's beautiful face. Ntingu raised her eyebrows, propped her chin up and looked at me. "Deep Song, you've been very unfocused these past few days." I didn't dare look at him, so I quickly lowered my head to look at the homework. "Where?" Ntingu squinted her eyes, evaluating me with interest. "You have something to hide from me, right? Can I hide something from you?" Ntingu didn't ask any more, just her eyes darkened. "It's best not to have one." I thought this matter was over, but I didn't expect Ntingu to come to my house. That couple came again, this time including the factory director who fired my father. This time, my father treated them very kindly. They proudly bullied my father. And my father, constantly bowing his head for life, said he would give them a good life. But now the situation is like this, I can't do anything. I tried to clench my fists, wanting to stay calm. Just when I was about to hold it no longer, someone pulled my collar. I looked up, it was Ntingu with a cold smile. He said softly, "Deep Song, you are very good, you dare to hide such a big thing from me." The middle-aged man ate melon seeds, threw the melon seed shells on the ground, and scolded my parents. "The owner wants to buy our house and is making things difficult for them." She sat on a chair, drank tea, and said proudly, "If you sell your house to us soon, you won't lose your job. I gave you the chance, but you don't need it. You really don't know how to be reasonable." Before she could finish speaking, Ntingu kicked her and fell to the ground. The owner was surprised. "Who are you?" The middle-aged man ran to help his wife. "You dare to kick my wife? If you kick her to the ground, you're done, you're really done." Ntingu, hands in pockets, cold voice, "I know you guys are very impatient, but don't rush, it's less than 10 minutes. In front of my house, a line of cars appeared. The leading luxury car just stopped. A man and a woman walked down. Elegant man, elegant woman, and very beautiful. As soon as she entered, the woman took off her glasses and her voice rang out, "Who dares to bully Deep Song? Does our family not want to live anymore?" Ntingu took a few steps back, grabbed my hand, a look of pity on her face. "This is Deep Song, our family? Oh my, Aunt Tong, I finally get to meet you. You're so obedient, I've seen your photo in the observation diary. Good baby, you're even more obedient than what Ntingu said. I see you have softened, what else do you want to say?" Ntingu coughed dryly. "Don't forget the main thing with Deep Song. Don't be afraid, Aunt Tong will help you with your anger." After speaking, he ran back to my parents, who were standing next to me, not daring to move. I asked in a low voice, "Ntingu, who are they?" Ntingu's eyes flashed unnaturally. "My parents." Ntingu's parents are different from what I heard. Aunt Tong was moved and held my parents' hands. "Hello, I'm Aunt Tong, mother of Ntingu, your son's roommate." My father was stunned and stammered in response, "Hello." Aunt Tong clapped her hands, "My father, leave this matter to me, I will help you handle it." After the two of them finished talking, she pulled my mother behind her. His face immediately changed. "Are you the only ones who want to compete with my family, Deep Song?" Aunt Tong was holding our hands just now, but at this moment it seemed like she had turned into a different person. The oppressive aura on his body made people not dare to look straight. That is the aura of someone standing on high, making people unable to help but want to bow their heads. The middle-aged man swallowed his saliva. He never dreamed that the president of NT Group would come to our defense. If we knew, give him 10,000 livers, he wouldn't dare come and scold us. Because the big company investing in exploiting this old alley is NT Group. Furthermore, most business activities in Mintan are in the hands of NT Group. The people who were still proud just now their faces were pale and they sat down on the ground. The middle-aged man was about to cry. Aunt Tong only needed one glance, and a bodyguard covered his mouth and forcibly took them away. I stared at Aunt Tong. "And Gu, what's wrong?" My eyes are definitely lighting up. "Your mom is so cool." Everything calmed down. My parents were grateful and invited Aunt Tong and Uncle An to stay for dinner. They also did not criticize, directly called to refuse today's party and happily sat down. Aunt Tong patted my head and asked, "Who gave you that name? It's so cultured, so cool. It suits you very well." I seriously answered, "It was ordered by my grandmother." "If you're illiterate, why are you the grandmother who gave me your name?" "Because my father told me that when I was born, my grandmother carried a basket and the hen that pushed eggs at home from the countryside to the city, a 2-hour drive. She walked step by step. At that time, our family was poor, there was no phone, she didn't know which hospital we were in. Even if you go to a big city, you can't find directions, so you can only ask each hospital yourself. At that time, her back had begun to bend from working in the fields all year round, but she still found it alone. We just want to take a look at you. Your mother asked her to name you. She thought for a long time and then said, 'Name me Deep Song.' She said she was a unique treasure in the world. This is the first time I tell these stories in front of others." And Gu listened very attentively and said nothing. Uncle An was always silent, moved to tears. Aunt Tong also wiped her tears, so touched. She looked at Gu again with a disdainful expression. "It's over, how can Deep Song love you so much?" And Gu was silent. Recently, the school organized a math competition. If you are at the top, you can represent your school to participate in the province-wide math competition. If achieved well, this will add an excellent point to the application. But Gu had to participate in other competitions, so she did not participate in this exam. As for me, I quietly competed and won first prize. Everyone knows that the person representing the school in the exam is me, an unknown person. They all don't take me seriously. They all said that this time I was just lucky, taking the exam would just be a loss of face, it would be better to give the opportunity to someone else to compete for glory on behalf of the school. There were so many denials that even I felt like I couldn't. Probably just luck. But what about if I stay up late to teach early and study every day? Bang, a book was placed on my desk by Gu. Gu bent down to look at me, his breath blowing into my ear. I looked at him in fear and said the words filled with self-pity. They all said I couldn't. Gu smirked, her tone carrying mischief. But what he said made me feel reassured. "Don't be afraid, it's just an exam. If you don't succeed, I'll teach you to go and win first prize for them to see." Gu spoke very gently as if I could definitely do it. After a while, I looked into his eyes and nodded seriously. "Okay." So I did what I do best, which is study hard. And Gu became my personal tutor during this time. The school organizes a badminton tournament to reduce pressure on students. Gu represented our class to participate. His face drove countless male students crazy. So there were many people who came to cheer for him. Gu, who is usually cold, this is the only chance to openly cheer for him. I stood in the crowd, holding a bottle of water and obediently looked at him. Gu saw me. He was cold and distant. Now he smiles gently and naturally like a peacock spreading its tail. The male students shouted more frantically. Right from the start of the match, Gu attacked very strongly. "Your team has difficulty defending." I stood in the crowd and exclaimed, "Gu is truly omnipotent." The match went on until midway, then there was a break. Many people brought water to Gu, but he all refused. I stood outside, quickly opened the water bottle cap and walked towards him. But before I could get close, a player on the team took it away. That person was panting, looking like he was about to die. "Thank you, classmate, your water came just in time." I was about to say this isn't water for him, but seeing how tired he was, I thought, let's just give it to him. But when I raised my head, I saw Ntingu's resentful eyes. Before I could explain to him, the match started again. In the second half, Ntingu fought even more aggressively, almost continuously stealing the ball, not giving the opponent any chance, completely overwhelming them. Everyone can feel the anger on him. Not only were the opponents surprised, but also the teammates were surprised. What's wrong with Ntingu? Why is he suddenly playing badminton like that? Another teammate wiped away his sweat. Who knows, Ntingu is inherently cold. Who knows what he's thinking, and he doesn't like to talk. We don't dare to ask. In the end, Ntingu ended the match with an overwhelming victory, without any suspense. The match ended, everyone dispersed. I went next to Ntingu. Ntingu. With both hands in his pockets, his tone was slightly angry. What? You unscrupulous person, give water to others but not me. Ntingu, you look at me, tell me to look, do I have to look? I looked at him with sparkling eyes. You will look. Ntingu cursed silently, don't look at me like that. Then obediently raised his head. I really lost to you. I used a tissue to wipe the thin layer of sweat from his forehead. He leaned close to his ear and said seriously, Ntingu, today you are really good, worthy of being my tablemate. My eyes shined. Ntingu quickly backed away, her ears red. Afraid he would be shy, I was about to leave when Ntingu pulled the corner of my shirt. He said in an embarrassed tone, if you can say it, you can say it a little more. I discovered that the closer it got to the day I took the province-wide math exam, the more people said bad things about me. In their eyes, I was so normal that I represented the whole school in the math exam. They think I can't do it at all. Right before I took the exam on Monday, there was a flag-raising ceremony at the beginning of the week. Ntingu, as the top student in the class, stood on the podium to speak. The schoolyard, which was usually noisy and bustling, suddenly fell silent. Everyone was surprised. The minister has always refused to speak, so why did he agree to come up here today? Ntingu is famous for being cold and rarely meets a minister who is willing to speak. Everyone listened attentively, including the principal. Eye contact also carries satisfaction and anticipation. Eyes gradually focused on Ntingu. He tapped on the microphone. Today, everyone is present, I'm up here to say a few words. In the book there's a saying, it's raining and storming outside, all over the mountains and hills are today. So, deep song. Ntingu paused for a few seconds. I stood under the stage and suddenly heard my name, my heart skipped a beat. I stood in the crowd, my eyes met with Ntingu on the podium. Ntingu slightly curled her lips, full of confidence. No matter what others say about you, you just need to stick to what you think is right. Whatever you want to do, just do it. Life is very short, but there can be many moments. I hope you can give your all and leave no regrets in these beautiful years. As for me, everyone says I'm arrogant. But I will forever bow my head for you. Having finished speaking, Ntingu looked around the schoolyard, her tone was gentle, taking up everyone's time. I'm very sorry, there's nothing else, I just want to cheer for my small tablemate. Others don't believe you, I do. Deep song, don't be nervous when competing, you tried very hard. There are many things, I have taught you everything I should teach you. Having finished speaking, Ntingu put down the microphone under the surprised eyes of the teachers, put one hand in her pocket, and walked down. The whole schoolyard was silent for a moment, not knowing who shouted, "Oh my God, Sister N is so cool." All the students suddenly regained consciousness, the sound of blood flute rang out everywhere. Oh my God, was the minister confessing his love just now? No matter what, it's wonderful. This is still the cold as ice Ntingu I know. How dare you confess your love in front of the principal? Deep Sungong is a participant in the national contest. So he must be very good. The minister values him so much, I am an audience and I also feel honored. Oh my God, just now I thought this would be a serious speech. I thought I would learn a lot of knowledge, but I didn't expect that the minister would not follow common sense. I stood among my classmates, dumbfounded, holding my chest. My heart was beating so fast, all around me were the cheers of my classmates, but I seemed to only hear my own violent heartbeat. It's over, I may have fallen in love with Ntingo. In the evening, after packing my luggage, I went out to the balcony to enjoy the fresh air, thinking endlessly and hesitating for a long time. I still called him. The smiling voice of my small desk mate rang out from the other end of the line, different from the usual coldness. I softly called out, "Ntingo, here. Ntingo, I have made a very important decision." Ntingo's voice became quiet. He patiently replied, "I'll tell you." I took a deep breath and said very firmly, "If I win first prize this time, I will confess my love to you." The other end of the line was silent, and Ntingo said nothing. And I waited anxiously. Suddenly, there was a gasp on the other end of the line. Ntingo said with a trembling voice, carrying a bit of self-pity, "It's okay, I'm so happy." Spitting out the leftover meat that was pricked by cactus spines, the corners of my mouth couldn't help but curl up. "Do you believe me like that? What if I don't win first prize?" Ntingo said naturally, "Your tablemate is a student taught by me. Be confident, you will win first prize." Through the phone, I could also feel Ntingo's confidence. I couldn't help but be infected by him. It seems he always had such magic power. I will definitely win first prize. Ntingo and I were together. I tried very hard to win the first prize, using my strength to silence those who looked down on me. Aunt Tong fed me strawberries and said with a satisfied look, "Our deep song family is really good." The first time we took the exam, we were the whole province and won first prize. "Come on, eat another strawberry." I shyly opened my mouth. My father was massaging next to him and also chuckled. It's still thanks to Ntingo's good teaching that our deep song family has improved so much. And Ntingo occasionally giggled next to her. This state started from the day we were together. That day, Ntingo looked at me with eyes full of emotion. He's trying to suppress something. "Deep song, since we're together, you can't break up." I like to pretend, and I also like to be jealous. "Do you still want to be with me?" I looked into his eyes and nodded slightly. "Ntingo, I like you." Ntingo was very excited, immediately turned around on the spot and hugged me tightly, ignoring the surprised eyes of everyone around, like a child constantly rubbing against me. He smiled non-stop, muttering, "Marriage, marriage." I also smiled and replied, "There's no need to be in such a hurry." From that day on, Ntingo began to occasionally smile innocently. Schoolmates who didn't know the truth started to rumor, Ntingo was driven crazy by studying. Everyone said he was under too much pressure and that he was studying like a fool. Everyone said, "It's just an exam, it's not worth putting the minister under such pressure." No matter how urgent the exam is, it is still a challenge facing all students. It is not the end but a new beginning. Therefore, the classmates began to put their all into moving forward. Me too. Ntingo, to compensate me for her knowledge, studied with me every afternoon until late. Luckily, I did well in the exam. Although he couldn't get into Ntingo's school, it was still a very good key university. Ntingo and I could go to college in the same city. The day I entered university, Ntingo took me to school. He drove his powerful sports car, running around the school lap after lap, afraid that others wouldn't know he was my girlfriend. If it weren't for the security guard stopping me, he would have taken me to the men's dormitory and made my bed. Unable to enter, Ntingo's expression was very upset. "What kind of school is this? The male dormitory won't let you in." Time passes so quickly, for years of college have passed in the blink of an eye. Ntingo and I are still together. We enter society working in the field we are good at. A few years later, he and I registered our marriage. Ntingo is 27 years old. In the field she is good at, she has achieved an unshakable position. During the meeting on the company's rooftop, Ntingo sat in the chair position. His fingers unconsciously tapped on the tabletop, his expression sluggish. The senior managers sitting below were sweating profusely and did not dare to breathe loudly. They already have experience. This is a sign before Tom gets angry. The late Vaughan's wife was also there. When she texted for help, Vaughan, I'm going to visit his grave with him. Facing the pitiful eyes of late Vaughan, I understood and took out my phone. The call is connected. In the conference room, which was frighteningly silent, suddenly a private phone rang. Senior managers breathed a sigh of relief. They are too familiar with this bell sound. For them, and Go looked at the name flashing on the phone screen. And Tong, who was originally cold, nicknamed him Siu Kong. He picked up the phone, stood up, pressed the answer button. Wife, come pick me up. I want to go home. And Go's eyes suddenly became gentle. The scary aura just now disappeared instantly. He smiled, his tone serious. Okay, just stand there, don't move. The meeting ended. I flipped through high school photos. My eyes always stop at the memories that are close to the end. College entrance exam, a normal afternoon in high school, the sun set, leaving only the sunset shining through the window in the classroom. Quiet, only the sound of me rustling about my homework could be heard. And Go quietly sat next to her, reading a book. He lazily leaned back in his chair, one hand holding a book, the other resting loosely on my chair. Occasionally, he lightly tapped the back of the chair. I was leaning against him, stretching, the pen unconsciously poking my cheek. And Go, I called softly. And Go patiently responded, what's wrong? Do you know the meaning of the osmanthus flower? Before he could answer, I continued to speak, persistently and gently. The hibiscus flower blooms and then fades, but each time it fades, it's because the next bloom is better. The 4 seasons rotate and multiply endlessly, so its meaning is perseverance and gentleness. And I like you the same way. Side story on the opening day of Mintan No. 1 High School. On the sidewalk, parked full of school buses. In the crowd, 2 female students especially stood out. Why did you come to high school? Haven't you learned all the high school knowledge since elementary school? And Go, carrying a school bag in one hand, chewing gum and watching Elsie glance at other students coming to check in. I just went to school a few days later, randomly took the exam, won first prize and then went home to report to my family. It was impossible for me to finish high school. It was a waste of my life. I guess so too. High school knowledge is too simple for NT. You're not an idiot, how can you really obediently finish high school? As they walked through the hallway, past the 3rd grade door, and Go stopped at the position next to the 3rd grade window. A male student was standing there blankly. Outside tables were cleaned. He probably intended to sit there, but right now he was raising his head and saying something to a chubby and aggressive friend. The chubby boy threw his bag on the table inside. Contradictory tone. Do you know who I am? Don't you dare refuse me. It's your honor if I can be your table mate. The male student was speechless for half a day, but his resolute attitude was determined not to give way. And Go, originally arrogant, now stood blankly at the door of 3rd grade. His eyes stared at the male student in class. He had only one thought in his mind, so good, really good. Done, this high school must be studied. Thinking that, I couldn't control my legs and walked into 3rd grade. The long, slender finger made a soft thud, and the chubby boy's school bag was thrown to the ground. And Go said coldly, the seat inside, I want it. Am I wrong? I came first. Who are you? You can clearly see who's coming, the chubby boy was annoyed. And Go immediately became speechless and had no opinion. After the chubby friend left, and Go strode in and sat down. The male student standing next to him seemed to hesitate for a long time, then carefully extended his hand towards Go. The voice was a bit tense. Classmate, hello. My name is Deep Song, from now on I will be your desk mate. And Go did not raise her hand to respond, but took out a very thick physics book from her bag with an indifferent expression. And Go, the female student accompanying Go, was stunned by his series of actions. She was about to step in, but Ntingu's eyes made her hesitate. As she walked away, she obediently took her phone back and texted Ntingu, "Ntingu, please go out, you're in the wrong class. You're a first grader, not this class. Go out quickly." Ntingu only answered 2 words, "Get out quickly." The female student asked again, "Sisterin, what's wrong?" Ntingu calmly texted, "I'm in love."